Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Weather the Storm Expert Hurricane Tips for HOA and Condos. So glad you can join us today. My name is Millie Ventura, and I'm the Business Development Manager for the Palm Beach region here at Castle Group. Joining us today is our very own Brian Street, Executive Vice President of Field Operations, Nikki Smith, Empire Works Business Development Manager, Erica D'Alessandro, Noble Elevators Business Development Manager, Andrew Massey, Plastridge Sales Executive, Melissa Oliveira, East Coast Facilities Business Development Manager, and Jesus Alfonso, DSS Condo Project Manager. Before we kick it off, I want to invite you to actively engage by asking questions in the chat. Displayed on the screen is information on how to submit your questions. To ensure we make the most of everyone's time, we'll address all questions at the end of the session. I'll be assisting behind the scenes with the chat. I'll now have the panel introduce themselves. Brian, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brian Street, Executive Vice President of Field Operations with Castle. Been with Castle for about 15 years. We're one of the top management firms here in the state of Florida. And honestly, I can't believe we're already talking about hurricane season again. It feels like we just got through the season, but this is what we do. And it's all about preparation. We're going to talk a lot about that today. And it's one of the most important pieces. And I just want to thank the rest of our panelists because it is about preparation. So I'll turn it over to Jesus to introduce himself and what he's here for.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jesus Alfonso. I'm a project manager, owner's rep for DSS Condo, Socotec US. I'm a civil engineer originally, and now a project manager, owner's rep. I've been in the company for about 5 years now, and I'll be your specialist for any ongoing projects and what to do when a named storm does approach you. And I'll pass it over to Andrew.
Hi, I appreciate it. I also can't believe that we're already talking about hurricane season. It's crazy, but I'm with Plastridge Insurance. I've been with Plastridge about 8 years. We're a family-owned agency headquartered in Delray Beach, founded in 1919. So I've been here 8 years. Plastridge has been here about 106 years. So it's been quite some time, but yeah, it really is all about preparation. And I think, Brian, that's probably a pretty solid way to foreshadow our conversation, because I think that's going to be the theme, which is great. So we're looking forward to it. And let me see, as far as names go, Brian, do you have, who should we pass?
Yeah, we'll go to Nikki Smith next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Nikki Smith. I represent Empire Works Reconstruction, and I oversee the market from Homestead to Vero Beach. We are a reconstruction firm, so we take care of your exterior renovations, large-scale exterior renovations on HOAs, high-rises, commercial properties, and apartments. We also specialize in construction defect services, along with doing a lot of the milestone repairs. We work with a lot of your local engineers to ensure that your buildings are structurally safe. I have a background in property management. I was a property manager for 3.5 years, so I'm definitely an added value to our team. They get to see things from both sides of the coin, just to make sure that we are in line with management companies such as Castle, to make sure that we have our own hurricane protection plans in place when we are working on site. We also work alongside with just about everyone here, especially with Jesus. Is it Jesus or Jesus?
Jesus.
Jesus's team. Okay, we also work alongside with Jesus and Erica, and I'm just very excited to be here with you guys to share some of our knowledge on how we handle projects and what you should be doing and things that you should be including in your contracts when you're doing any project during hurricane season and outside of hurricane season. I don't know if you guys saw it yesterday, but we practically had an unnamed storm yesterday with all that rain that we had, and that rain causes damages. So I'm sure Andrew can also touch on that, and Brian and Millie and everyone on here, as to how damaging those named storms can be. Sometimes a lot more damaging than the actual hurricanes that we've been facing over the last couple of years. So once again, we're super excited to be here, and I'm going to hand it over to the lovely elevating Erica. Thank you for the amazing introduction, Nikki. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Erica D'Alessandro with Nuvo Elevator. Nuvo Elevator is a family-owned business. We are the largest family-owned elevator company that is not publicly traded. We service, maintain, modernize, inspect, and repair elevators, escalators, and moving walks, which are those lovely things that we stand still on in the airports to take us from Area 1 to Area 2. I'm here to basically teach you guys how to maintain your elevators during the hurricane season, how pre-hurricane, post-hurricane, how to ensure that we don't put your elevator back in service prematurely, or to ensure that we mitigate any water damage when it comes to preparing your elevators for hurricane. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to being able to teach you something.
Great. And last but not least, Melissa, how are you?
I'm good. I'm Melissa Oliveira. I am with East Coast Facilities going on about 4 years now. I too have a background in property management, have been an LCAM and a commercial property manager, and serviced the South Florida market for approximately 13 years. I'm native to South Florida. Hurricanes are what we do here. East Coast Facilities, we specialize in everything landscape maintenance. We are a full service company when it comes to landscape maintenance and then self-performing. We also do other services such as snow removal throughout the rest of the US, but we have a very special specialty in the sense that our iron and equipment that we have can be brought down here to South Florida in the event of a storm, which a lot of my other competitors do not have that ability. So with that being said, I look forward to teaching everybody today on what to do in the event of a storm happen and what to do in the event that the property is damaged with trees being down or things being damaged. Okay.
Excellent.
That's it.
Thank you. So just before we get into a lot of the preparation items, just as a very quick reminder on, truly for maybe some of our new board members that just moved to South Florida that don't quite know what a hurricane is. Maybe they watched the news when they were living up in the Northeast, but didn't really understand it. Basically use the Saffir-Simpson scale. So, you may have heard of a Category 1, which is, 74 to 95 miles an hour, all the way up to a Category 5, which if you've been in Florida for a while, that was Andrew that came through, a few decades ago. And so just it's something to watch out for. These are not minor storms like Nikki was mentioning with the unnamed kind of typhoon that kind of went through here quickly the other day, but it dumped a lot of water. But some of the issues that we have with hurricanes are also the storm surges and the wind speeds and everything else, not just the rain itself. So here's our names for next year, or this year, I guess, from Andrea through Wendy. We've been on a unfortunate tear of getting through most of the alphabet, which is also scary here in Florida. The warm waters of the Caribbean and the Atlantic coming off of the coast of Africa. It's really caused a number of storms to form very early, actually, in the season itself. So I know we talk a lot about, May and June is kind of starting up and planning, but that's why we actually moved this into April, is because we're starting to see storms form earlier in the season. Typically for South Florida, it's that kind of September, October timeframe where it's the peak. But as I mentioned, we want to be prepared early. And so now we have a few months until we get into that peak season here. So just quickly, you have the hurricane watch. You'll hear that on the news all the time that we're expecting, and it's possible with the next 48 hours. The warning, which is a little bit worse, which means 36 hours, the hurricane conditions are expected. And then sometimes you'll get the extreme wind warning, which you're basically getting your hurricane strength winds hitting whatever that region is. And that's one of the things that you have to also watch out for, is that these storms are massive. And so everybody is comfortable looking at the cone of uncertainty. Well, that doesn't take into account the true size and scale of these storms, where the hurricane force winds or the tropical force winds stretch out hundreds of miles. And sometimes the last couple of big storms that hit the west coast of Florida, the storm winds were actually felt on the east coast of Florida, which is 100 miles wide. So these storms are massive, and we need to make sure that even though the cone of uncertainty maybe has it in the Caribbean heading up toward the Tallahassee or the Big Bend of Florida, we're still going to feel them here in the East Coast or even on the West Coast of Florida. So we need to take this into account as we work our way through the system or the season, excuse me. But first and foremost, you're going to hear me say be prepared. This is the most important thing. And I always like to start off with, you have to be prepared first, which means a lot of water, dried goods, food that you can store for, a number of weeks. You have to imagine that, if these storms hit, you could be without power for a couple of weeks. Have, food for your pets, have medicine for yourself, fuel up your vehicle. And if you have an electric vehicle, there's, take that into consideration. We actually saw a number of fires due to the storm surge with cars that were still plugged in. So you got to make sure that you take care of yourself and your family first, as we at Castle and our great panelists here are helping the community take care of itself and be prepared. But this is important for us, especially for some of our snowboards that may be up north or maybe traveling back and forth, have family, things like that. So we want to make sure that you take care of yourself first and you are prepared. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not just maybe the speed of the wind, but it's the storm surge that comes in. Basically what a hurricane does is it kind of will suck out the water from the beach and then push it all right back in. And it could be anywhere between 3, 5, 8, 10. We even saw 12-foot storm surges in these recent storms. It can spawn some of the outer bands can spawn tornadoes. Hopefully, I know we put it in here, hopefully nobody's out swimming in the hurricanes, but sometimes you get some people that want to ride the waves, but the rip currents, literally it can suck you right off of the coast very, very quickly. Strong winds, and then obviously the flooding and rainfall that can hit. And you're seeing a lot of this really dramatic storm that aren't even hurricanes in the south and the kind of the Mideast right now. They are just getting a deluge of storm rainwater that are flooding all the rivers and canals, which are now flooding all the areas around them. So these storms cannot be taken lightly. I know a lot of people joke around that it's only a category 1. I'm going to wait it out. All these things. These storms can be very, very dangerous. So we also use here at Castle, and we email this out to our group in advance of these storms. The Red Cross is a great hurricane app. You can really track a lot of this information in advance of the storms so that you can see where things are coming. But also, when you have the app, and it could be on your phone, an iPad, or anything else, after the storm, you may not have great cell service. The Wi-Fi could be down, the cell towers can be down, so you need to plan accordingly. A lot of the new cell phones actually have the ability to make emergency phone calls through satellites, but you need to get close to a hospital or police station, which may have their Wi-Fi up earlier, power up earlier. So you need to be prepared for the inevitable, is that you may go without several days without power. And cell service could be impacted as well. So now this kind of gets into where I think the focus of this presentation is, which is preparing for the worst. And how do we get there? What do we need to do? From the property management side, selfishly, I'll go first, I guess. We need to make sure that we understand your building and the community, from the cooling towers, the pool equipment, the elevators that I know Erica is going to chime in on as well, the drains around the community, which I know Melissa is going to talk a little bit about, just from the landscaping standpoint, and making sure that as you're going through the community, tree branches can fall, they can clog your drains. So we want to make sure that your trees have been properly trimmed. For some of our towers have the emergency generators. Are they ready? Are they up to snuff and then can operate? One of the important things, we talked about the storm surge. Do you know your finished floor elevation? So when that storm surge is coming, have you raised everything above that, what we're thinking? If it's a 12-foot storm surge and you're, only a couple feet above sea level, you can have some major damage there. So again, clearing the drains around the community. So that's the grates that you'll see in the roadway. Also in some of the towers, you may have plugs that are meant to allow the water to come up from the groundwater so that there's no pressure, but you got to make sure that you can't stop the water from coming in. That they're designed to raise and lower with the sea level as it goes through. And then also, if you are in a high-rise tower, some of the things we don't necessarily think about all the time is if you don't have power, well, that means all the ice in your ice trays are going to melt. That's all your food will go bad and spoil, all those things. So you got to be prepared when you are, if you are a snowbird and maybe you're leaving for the season, you got to make sure that you're preparing your homes accordingly. And then I'm going to have Melissa chime in quickly. When we talk about the tree trimming, getting ready for season, when should they start to get the tree trimming done, Melissa? Like what should be the plan for the property management team working with the board to start getting the community ready for season? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Right now is the answer. In South Florida, we have a little bit different weather than you could say in the north. February is leaf drop season, or what we know as fall, right? That is the time when all the leaves are coming down. A lot of your storm drains are going to get clogged with leaves and debris. We specialize with certain types of equipment that we can actually vacuum out a lot of the roadways with an enormous leaf vacuum. I would encourage that, everybody does contact their landscaper, make sure the drains are cleared. As soon as February is over and we head into March and April, this is where you really need to get tree trimming on the schedule. At this point in time, we're doing everything from hardwoods, palms, and preparing for that hurricane season. April, I'd say May, and then even into June and July, we will continue to do that. But it's, we're already heading into it and we're already there at that point. You should have this in place like now.
And that's great. And that's true. You need to get the trees trimmed. They need to kind of trim them back and get them hurricane ready. And what that means is that it kind of opens up the canopy.
The windows. We put windows
exactly
to allow air to pass through.
Exactly right. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like to open it up because they have these beautiful canopies over the roadways and it's but it will actually protect the tree by opening up a little bit when those heavy winds come through, where it's not going to put too much stress on the branches, which could break off the branches or push the entire tree over that we've seen in the past.
Right. And also trimming them away from buildings, right? Those wind speeds can cause a lot of damage. We've had branches and all sorts of things smack into the side of the building. That's your real estate asset. You need to be prepared and protect the real estate asset by trimming the trees away from the building, getting anything out of the way that when the winds come through, it's able to pass through.
And then the other big piece is from a property management side is making sure that you have contracts with vendors. And Melissa, I'm going to come back to you as well, because it's debris cleanup. Yes. So now the storm has passed. The management team is back on site and they've seen a few branches come down and block the roadways, or the debris is just piling up because of all the trees in these massive HOA communities. It's one of the things that we talk to all of our property managers about is getting with your vendors now to make sure that your community is first, if you will. So how do you work through that contract piece with the property managers?
Right. So at this point in time, we've already distributed our hurricane agreement, as we call it, for all of our clients that are already in place. So when we have a hurricane agreement, it's basically a formal agreement that says in the event of a storm, we will be part of your first responding team. So we have it set up that once they call an all clear and the hurricane warning has been lifted and the storm has passed, our teams disperse out into the field. Anybody that has a hurricane agreement in place prior to the storm is first priority. From there, we evaluate each property on a scale of green, yellow, and red being, the worst of conditions where roadways are blocked, emergency vehicles cannot pass through, things of that nature. Those are taken care of first and foremost. In certain severe cases, we have actually had to bring down some of our trucks from the Northeast, and we've been able to change out some of the equipment to lift them up, chop up the stumps, get the branches broken up, put off to the side until we can get debris removal in place. But it's super imperative that if you haven't had the conversation, a conversation should be had with your landscaper no later than March or April about being a priority. If you do not have an agreement in place, we cannot prioritize you, later on, if you will, even if it's severe. There's so many accounts that we have, there's so many things that we're trying to do, we're trying to organize. There's onesie twosies that do wait. And unfortunately, they get pushed to the back of the line when we're talking about emergency response.
And that is excellent. And again, I always have the quote at the bottom: failure to plan is planning to fail. It is now the time, March, April, May, is getting with all of your vendors, making sure that you are ahead of the game, because after a storm, a little bit of cash isn't going to make a vendor be able to get out to you faster. They've already have these contracts in place. So you'll already be outside of their time frame, and the communities around you will start to get back to normal faster. So it's an opportunity for you to be ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
So from our standpoint, management side, we basically create a hurricane plan. And so part of that plan is all of this preparation. So Andrew, from an insurance standpoint, what should we be doing now? It's preseason. What should we be doing now from an insurance standpoint to A, make sure that we're properly covered, but then B, that we are prepared in the event of a named impact?
Yeah, the timing for this particular part of the conversation is great, because the insurance market is getting much better, and that's refreshing to hear, I'm sure, because it's been unbelievable the past 4 years. I mean, I know I mentioned our agency's been around 106 years. What we just went through, the consensus is that was the most difficult period for the Florida insurance market of all time. I mean, it's like, there's no nice way to say that, but that's shifting right now pretty aggressively. And what we're seeing, and when I say that, the first thing everyone thinks about is premiums, right? Which is, makes sense. The premiums have gotten out of control, and we are seeing premium decreases. But what we're also seeing, right, is that when we go through a period where premiums are going up, what happens kind of behind the scenes, a lot of these insurance companies change the coverage, and it flies under the radar because we're focused on the premium, right? So as far as reviewing your coverages now and how can we best prepare for hurricane season, there's a few things I would encourage everyone to look for at renewal and ask the question and see if it's available. One of the things that the insurance companies moved away from the past 3 years was a calendar year hurricane deductible. Now, the hurricane deductibles are significant because they're a percentage of the building values, right? So if your community is, a 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million insured value community, if we have a hurricane, the deductible is typically 3% or 5% of that, right? And it's a big number. So what's happened in the past 4 years is a lot of companies have kind of played with the way that deductible works to where they're per occurrence deductibles now, most of them, meaning that big deductible, right? 5%, 3%, it could be a 7-figure deductible, resets every single time we have a hurricane. So we talked about Hurricane Andrew, 92, right? I'm a Florida native as well. There's not many of us, so I'm glad there's more than. But 2004 was the year that we had Ivan, Francis, Charlie, and Gene, basically hurricanes back to back for 45 days, right?
Mhm.
If your community has $1 million hurricane deductible, right? And we have 4 storms in one season and it's a per occurrence deductible, your deductible, right, for Ivan is $1 million. Your deductible for Francis is $1 million. Your deductible for Gene is $1 million. So in a season like that, with a per occurrence deductible, you have 4 separate deductibles and they're huge. Okay. What we're seeing now, and this is probably the past 6 to 12 renewals I've done, have all changed from per occurrence deductibles to calendar year deductibles.
Mm.
And that's what it sounds like. It work. The calendar year deductibles work the same way medical insurance works, where you have one deductible, and if Hurricane Ivan erodes that deductible, you do not have a brand new deductible for every single storm. It's one big deductible for the hurricane season. And that's really important because when you're budgeting for a potential deductible, if you can look at it and say, okay, we have one deductible for the season, this is our exposure, that's a lot more comforting than we don't really know. I mean, it kind of depends on how many storms we have. So when we're talking about preparing coverage going into hurricane season, that's something I would definitely recommend everyone kind of push for when you're having the renewal conversations.
No, that's a really good point. Since the market has changed, I'm glad, our board members and team are hearing that, because it is something that we need to push as well and remind the brokers to, let's help our associations out and get the calendar year in, especially if they had the old way through their policy now. So that's a really good point. One of the things that we'll do at the site is, after we make sure that we're properly covered, and those are the early ones. We also take a ton of pictures to kind of show the pre-storm, basically view of the community. If it's a tower or a big HOA, does that help, or could that hinder the insurance piece if the association is impacted by the storm?
It's generally going to help. I do it at my house, right? So pre-storm, I do the same exact thing. I walk around, I take a video, I document everything for 2 reasons, right? The first reason, Brian, I think is kind of what you're alluding to. I'm in the insurance industry, obviously. I definitely don't think the insurance company always does the right thing. Okay. I know I'm not going to surprise anyone with that, but if you're able to document, right, exactly what the property looks like, what the state of the property is before and after, it makes it significantly more difficult for an insurance company to decline a claim. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, the other reason I do it, to be honest, and this is kind of more of the practical reason, is that if you do experience a major loss, catastrophic loss, you'd be surprised if you had to sit down and basically write out a list of everything that the association owned or everything that you own. It's not as easy as it sounds. And you will have to. The insurance company is not just going to cut a check.
Right.
You're to list specifically what you lost, and having that documented makes it a lot easier.
100%. And that's why we actually have our entire team do a complete dry run just for that purpose. Document what's there, go through, take pictures, property condition, and everything. And this is where I wanted to get with, Erica here, from making sure when we're doing these dry runs, we actually communicate out to the residents saying, we're going to basically get the building ready for a named storm event. And so from Erica, from the elevator standpoint, what are some of the rules that the property managers and the boards should consider when we are dealing with the elevators?
Well, first and foremost, we want to make sure that when we receive notification from the news channels that the elevators, I apologize, that the hurricane winds are above 35 miles an hour, we want to send out notification. We want to notify all handicapped or medically compromised that once the storm approaches, that the elevator will be shut down and it will not be utilized for transport. We want to send these notifications out prematurely, as when it becomes 45 miles an hour, it becomes a little bit more serious, and at 55 miles an hour, the elevator should be completely shut down. We also want to close up all openings to vents at the top of the hoistway and the machine space to limit water from entering. We want to review all sub pumps and switches and alarms to ensure they're in proper working order, as there is a flow switch in the pit of the elevator when it comes to the sub pump. When the water reaches a certain level, it hits the piece of the sub pump, which lets the sub pump know, okay, the water has reached an adequate level. Now to start utilizing the sub pump to suck up the water. We also want to review all light up stairwell signs in the entire building for working order. And then we want to take all proper documentation of pre-hurricane conditions, as much as the manager can visualize, to ensure that they get all of the photos needed in the event that the storm does affect the hurricanes and they need to seek insurance assistance. When taking care of the elevators, we want to make sure that if we have a traction elevator, which is on a rope and belt pulley system, and most people know that they have a traction elevator because the machine room is located on the roof of the building. We want to hang that elevator 1 story from the roof of the building. If we have a hydraulic elevator, which is on a jack and piston oil pressurized system, which is usually in buildings anywhere from 8 stories or below, we want to hang that elevator in the center of the building. We want to utilize sandbags in front of the doors of the elevators that have any openings to the exterior as well as to the lobby to prevent any water intrusion.
And those are really, thank you, because there's always some disclarity amongst our residents and our board. Sometimes they want to keep the elevators going until the very last minute, even after, management is gone because the storm is drawing near. They want to keep the elevator available to maybe some of the residents that are waiting it out. But that can actually cause more damage than stopping it, at 35 miles an hour and hanging it at the proper location. And from an insurance standpoint, if they don't follow those best practices, Andrew, I mean, that could basically nullify any claim coming through, right? So if they say, well, we're just going to wait, we don't think it's going to come close, but the winds hit 35, 40 miles an hour, and then there is damage because they've kept the elevator up and running, could that nullify their claim?
It's not going to help. So
good. Yeah.
Yeah, those determinations are always case by case. I mean, the key is that you have to avoid being negligent, right? And generally the way that that phrase is defined in our world is if you're negligent, right, it means you failed to do what a reasonable person or board would have done, right? So as far as each particular case and whether that falls into that bucket, I'd kind of kick over to the attorney, to the legal side. It definitely doesn't help, right?
Right. So, and that's why, we like to do these dry runs because it basically manages the expectations of the board and the community. So, when we do this, we're putting up all the shutters, we're moving all the pool furniture into the building. We're, working on making sure that we shut down the elevator, how to shut down the elevator, make sure that the community is aware. And so we basically do this in this time frame. We're actually our team are starting this in kind of mid to late April and in early May, so that we're ready for the season. And so like in May, we just make sure, because sometimes, you've changed your pool furniture. Well, before it used to all stack and nest properly and fits into a room. Well, you just upgraded, which is great. Now it no longer nests. And so now you don't know where you're actually going to store everything. So these are just a couple of things that we do internally, which is, create an overall plan. We know what our checklist is, everything that has to move inside. We also know who all of our residents are, and we keep them updated with where the storm is, evacuation routes, any shelters, and then obviously working with all of our vendors as we work through. Even up to 96 hours out, 72 hours out, we start clearing the area, working with the residents that may not be in town if they've left anything on their balconies, all the stuff that could be potential projectiles. We want to make sure that we've cleared that up. So Jesus, from a Nikki, obviously from a contractor standpoint, maybe they're working on a major concrete restoration project right now. And so we know that's going to lead into hurricane season. So what should be some of the items that are either in the contract, or we should start having those conversations with the contractors now to prepare for hurricane season as we're nearing?
I would say first things first, have your hurricane preparedness plan from your GC included in your contract. These are some of the questions any project, I don't care what it is, when you're interviewing your GCs, ask them what their plan is. Show me what your plan is. Walk me through what a typical day would be like if we're 36 hours. What is your team going to be? Who is my point of contact? Get those specifics put in place. We're a lot like you guys, Brian, when it comes to making sure we factor in time for our teams to take care of themselves first, and take care of their families first, and then go ahead and make sure that they're able to go ahead and get to the properties on time. I tell people all the time, as a GC, we're the cook, we don't write the recipe. So when it comes to certain things, we have to also follow the guidance of the engineer and the owner's rep on site. So we all have to work cohesively with the community and the board to make sure that, number one, we're given, the go ahead. And like I said, let's take it back to unnamed storms. There's times when we've had engineers shut down projects because there is some sort of, system out in the waterways. It may not be close, but it's better to be safe than sorry, where they will go ahead and shut down that job. And sometimes nothing happens, but we would rather make sure that everything is secured and made safe instead of running into a situation where we didn't jump the gun, we didn't do what we needed to do, and now we're dealing with a lot of damages that was caused by our machinery alone. Machineries do cause damage. So, Jesus, you can chime in at any time. Don't let me.
Yeah, so
Because I will
I
go.
did want to add the other aspect of things. So yes, the hurricane preparedness plan, extremely important to have. That should be part of the exhibits to the contract, and that should be done before. If you do not have it and you are undergoing a project, do go ahead and speak with your general contractor and get that in place. But the other thing to also take into account, property managers, is also the pricing of it, right? When you do go ahead and activate the hurricane preparedness plan, that is going to be an additional expense, and that should be planned for. For example, included in the contingency for your project's budget. Apart from that, for you to have an idea of how much that demobilization and remobilization for that hurricane preparedness plan to take into effect, that's something that you can have an idea of as well, either a lump sum or you can have it as time and material. If you have it in time and material, we recommend to have the hourly schedule of the GC's workers. That way, if you have 4 swing stages, you have an estimate of how many guys are going to be working on site to do the demobilization. You can have a good idea of how much that is going to cost you. It could get pricey, and we do recommend to get that in advance before a GC comes up and tells you, hey, this is the price. And then you might not agree with it. So you do want to get on the same page with them. Do have that hurricane preparedness plan in advance.
And he's
Yeah,
correct.
and
I'm sorry, Brian. He's absolutely right. You should know upfront what those hourly rates are. It should automatically be there. We know we all live in South Florida. We live in Florida. This is a hurricane prone state. So everybody knows what their rates are per hour. And also what their demobilization and mobilization fees are. So that's something that should be included in the contract as well. And we're doing the same things that you guys are doing, but far as on the exterior side of things, we are, number one, I would say going into the roof. We didn't even touch on the roof and making sure that you're checking your roofs. Roofs and windows are some of the top damages that most buildings experience during the hurricane season. So making sure that you are walking those spaces. I know a lot of times when we're, putting up swing stages and scaffolds and things of that nature, at some point it can compromise the integrity of the roof because the work is being done. So you want to make sure, if you even have a roofing project going on, what are you going to do to protect those projects? What can be done? What can be completed? check with your GC and say, okay, the storm is 96 hours out. What can you guys get done? What can we double down on the crew? Can we add in if they're on a 4-day work week, can we make it a 5-day work week? Can we work around the clock? What can we do? How can we meet in the middle? I tell people all the time, scheduling for construction jobs and things of that nature can be customized to your building. You have standard working hours for most projects, but in a case like this, and you're like, okay, this could be done at the end of the week, but okay, can we double the staff and get it done before the end of the week so that the project and the building doesn't, extend its time frame or create more damage, because now you have an opening that's now compromising the integrity of the building, or any water intrusion that may happen. We know wind-driven rain can do a lot of damage. Erica spoke about it as well, making sure that those areas are covered. I can't tell you how many times we've had to go into buildings and do destructive testing because of wind-driven rain getting into the building and getting into the elevator pit within itself. So I'm so happy that Erica touched on that. But Jesus, come on, baby.
No, I want to throw it back to Jesus as well, because from the owner's rep standpoint, a lot of our boards and PMs may not even know what questions to ask. We actually really highly recommend having a true kind of project manager, owner's rep that can speak to both sides, because there are a lot of opportunities where there could be some liquidated damages, or it was an unnamed storm, Nikki, that you mentioned, but a ton of rain. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but the crew doesn't show up. So having somebody there that understands both aspects, from the engineering and construction and working with the GC, to be able to speak intelligently to the board and guide the board to some of the stuff, Nikki, that you even mentioned, I think is really important.
And Brian, there's also some softwares that they can incorporate. Of course, we look at, okay, we might be out of power. Where are we going to be communicating with? Sometimes, phones have data. We use a software where everybody can be on the same page as to what was done. So there's a centralized place to document, okay, we've taken pictures of every single thing, what we've tied down, what was done. And you can insert those things into a software, so that way the community has access to it. When it comes to insurance, the owner's rep has access to it to make sure that they're making sure that we are doing what we need to do. And also the manager has access to it, so that they can create their newsletter and they're able to give their residents updates as to what's going on. We all know our residents want to stay in the know as to what's going on. So now you're able to put together your hurricane weekly report as to what did the GCs do? What did the property do? So now you have all of that information without having to scurry around and gather it yourself. So it's just another tool that you could use and ask for. Hey, ask your GC, what softwares you guys are using? How are you guys communicating? Not just when this is going on, when hurricane season, but overall in general.
In general.
Yeah, and one thing that's really important when it comes to the property managers that we do is that we really alleviate them with all the things that they have to do in this preparation. So to have someone represent the association, represent you, and we're pretty much doing everything that you would have to do with the GCs. And this isn't only for concrete restoration, right? It's with, if you're having any ongoing HVAC projects, elevator projects, roofing projects, it's just anything in general, right? We're going to be the ones to go ahead and assist the property manager. We pretty much do it for them. And that's one huge thing less that they have to do. And it really helps out to facilitate them with this hurricane preparedness as well.
It's one of the things that we talk about, it's forming these partnerships. There's only a few, really good reputable companies. And so our boards and our PMs, and that's who all of our panelists are, it's forming those partnerships with those reputable companies that work in tandem together to have a great project. Hopefully there's no hurricane, but in the event of these emergent type situations, everybody's able to come together and looking out for the best interest. So I know I don't want to run out of time here, but as we go through from a management side, we're doing everything, making sure that from the dry run, we're ready. We know what's there. Nikki, you mentioned a lot, hurricane newsletters, getting the information out is so important, because there's a lot of people either that have maybe moved, if they're going north, south, east, to get away from it. They want to know what's happening in their building, or they're snowbirds. They've gone back up north and they just want to understand what's really happening. Communication for us is key. making sure we have all the flood sacks, sandbags, or whatever tool necessary to try to keep water out as best as possible. I mean, some of these storm surges, that were, 5-10 feet, it kind of becomes impossible to do at certain points. And so then I want to get into, now we're in recovery mode. So, we've placed our sandbags, now the storm has happened, right? And we're we're at home, we're dealing with our families, we're going through it, but everybody's safe. After the storm, what do we need to do? So our managers have to be back on property within 4 hours after the storm, after the all clear is given. One of the things we say is take all the photos you possibly can. So you don't need data plans yet, but take your phone, go around, drive around. Melissa brought up a lot of things from the landscaping side. I want to get into more on, if we start noticing, obviously there's been water intrusion. So that means now we're in recovery mode of getting the drywall out, drying out the building, and inspecting the entire association. And it really kind of impacts, Andrew, from the insurance standpoint, how do we, provide that information? What's an insurable claim or not? And then starting to build back. What comes first? And I'll let you guys chime in. What comes first? Do we file the claim? Do we reach out to, to Empire Works to start doing the reconstruction? What's our next step?
Well, so post-storm, everyone has an obligation to prevent further damage, right? That's kind of the language in the policy. So the reality is you have to do what you have to do to prevent further damage in the community. If there's openings, whatever the case may be, you have to start. So when you're doing that, obviously save everything, right? Invoices, document everything. All of that's critical. And then, I know the 4-hour management back on site is great. We're kind of the same, Brian. I mean, it's as soon as we have the all clear, when post storm, I mean, we're riding around on the golf cart and looking at the damage. And I think everyone should know that's a perfectly reasonable request of your agent, right? It's very important especially if the claim is gray for any reason, right? For me to have the perspective of, I was there and I was on property and I saw this and I saw this is very helpful when you're communicating with the carrier and navigating the claim, particularly if you have an adjuster out there. Like if we've gone ahead and filed the claim and the insurance company sends someone out to look at it, I try to join every single one of those because, a couple of reasons. I mean, it provides comfort to the board, the management. I mean, obviously it's a stressful process for everyone involved, but also, and again, this goes back to, I'm in the industry. I'm pretty aware that the insurance companies aren't always doing the right thing. And if the claim is gray in any way, I mean, there are very specific and particular words, language that you may or may not want to use when you're communicating with an adjuster. So being there to kind of help navigate that and watch that is important. And again, that's a perfectly reasonable request of your agent. So that's basically how we handle the claims process start to finish, Brian.
And that's a good point you brought up. Our goal is to prevent further damage, which goes back to our original conversation about having the contracts in place that the vendors get out to your property first. So Nikki, if you can chime in on, when should we start having those discussions with you all from a rehabilitation phase after the storm to make sure that, we're getting the drywall out, we're doing, we're getting the place back open, because we can't just walk in and turn all the pumps and the AC as I have on the screen here and turn the elevators all back on. I mean, there could be some other damage. We want to make sure that we're inspecting all of our electrical rooms and all that first before we even start turning on the power.
So you said it best. It's a swift response. I could just touch bases on how we handled things when we had those huge storms in the Tampa market and the Orlando market. So prior to those storms hitting, what we typically do is we mobilize special teams to be in that area where even if we have to put them in a hotel, we have guys ready to go, special teams. The beauty about Empire Works is that we're a national company. Although each division functions individually based on their core services, we have access to the crew from other divisions where if we need them, because we never know if some of our team members may be stuck, their streets may be flooded, they may not be able to get away. So we're able to pre-mobilize those teams just in case. We take the expense of having them ready to go just in case something happens. So that way we can guarantee to have people on site immediately. One of the great things I would recommend is, like you said, is with those pictures. Someone mentioned something about not having cell service in the chat. Some people's phones might be dead. I recommend getting an old school, one of those cheap, less than $100 digital cameras off Amazon and keep it in your hurricane box. And that way you have it with your SIM card. So that way you can take those pictures immediately and get them uploaded. We also go ahead and inspect the area as well, the building as well. And we take pictures and we put together like a visual report. So that way, we've already taken our pictures beforehand and what things look like. We've taken them after, and we can give you a brief overview as to what we see going on. And that way you have your own record and you can include that in your project binder as to what happens. I'm sure it can help you out when it comes to insurance, and it just it creates like a history, a report card as to where you stand now. So that way we can meet with the engineers and our owners reps to get together on how we're going to move forward. Because a lot of the times there's a lot of debris, there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen first to get the site ready to get back into production.
Right. That's a good point. And Jesus, maybe from like the owner's rep standpoint, if they were doing an ongoing project, what role would you all have in getting the project going again, as Nikki just alluded to, but also maybe helping to understand any possible damage because they're stopping a project midstream and then getting it going again. What how could you help from the management side and the board side get those projects going?
Well, we get with a team like Nikki's, like the general contractor, and the first thing we do is schedule an on-site inspection and a walkthrough. So we want to take a look at what is the current state of the building, of the equipment, everything that the GC is responsible for, and the repairs themselves. Sometimes you have repairs that no matter if you do put, weather walls up to protect them, they do get compromised. And now you're behind again on the project. And it's just something that sometimes you can't prevent it. So the first thing is you want to get on the same page as a general contractor. You want to make sure that all the equipment, that there weren't any additional damages done. And then it's, in one word, it's just communication. You got to stay communicated with everyone on board, with property management, with the board of directors. They're going to go ahead and give that information off to the residents as well. So the first thing, going back on site, conducting your inspections, your walkthroughs, and then from there, depending on what you find, you either return to normal, hopefully, right? Best case scenario. And worst case scenario, you go ahead and work on those additional repairs that you would have to do.
Great. And then Erica, from the elevator standpoint, you brought up some really good information about how to prepare the building for an elevator. What about getting the elevators going again? Is there any issues with just turning them back on? How do you guys handle getting the elevators ready to put back into general use?
Well, I know it's redundant to say, but 7th grade science taught us not to throw a hairdryer into a bathtub, right? So this is the same concept. We don't want to prematurely return our elevators back to service and potentially put our beautiful electric closet into a pool of water. We want to have our contractor come out and review the elevator pit, to ensure that it is safe to put the elevator back in operation. No property should be allowing their engineers or their staff to put the elevator back in service prematurely. We want to make sure that the elevator pit is safe for the elevator to be put back into service. We also want to evaluate the top of the elevator car to ensure that there is no water intrusion that is going to negatively affect items such as our door operator, our door motor, or our electrical panels that are on top. We want to make sure that our traveling cable has not been submerged in water for a long period of time, and that it has an excessive amount of corrosion, rust, or any wear and tear that may have happened to the encasing of the traveling cable as it was submerged in water for X amount of time. When evaluating elevator contracts, you always want to make sure you know where your property falls as a priority on your vendors list when it comes to taking the elevator out of service, but also putting the elevator back in service. Most properties that are 55 plus, you want to hone in on the fact that the residents are elderly and the elevators are more of a necessity versus a luxury. So you just want to make sure that you are contacting your service provider and letting them know, trying to get a time frame of what their hurricane preparedness pre and post plan is, so that you can plan accordingly. Also, you want to have that verbiage placed in your contract when switching vendors. What is their pre and post plan, and where do they fall on the priority list, especially those that are more vintage in age when it comes to the residents at their property.
I like that term, vintage. And that kind of, as we get near the very end here, I think everybody's kind of also said, just how do we communicate, either through an app, or if we have some vintage residents, I like that term. How do we get the information out to them as well? Either posting on boards, emergency e-blast text messages, things like that. So as we wrap up, if everybody can maybe take the last, say a minute and just kind of say, what's the most important thing that you think each one of our board members that has been attending, or property managers has been attending, should do as we prepare for hurricane season?
I would say making sure that you do those routine maintenance inspections, stay up to date with your inspections on your exterior envelope, your roof. Ensure, like Brian mentioned earlier, those dry runs are very important. Documentation, knowing the status of all of your mechanical rooms and things around the property. And something that I find extremely important, and Castle does a really great job at that, is maintaining your relationships with your vendors, making sure, like, I know a lot of the times vendors can be a bit of a nuisance and they always have something they want to talk to you about, but it's imperative to keep these relationships, because what happens during this season from June 1st to November 30th, we're on your hot list because you need us, right? So from November 30th to through the holiday season is like, okay, we really don't need you anymore. But sometimes it's okay to, give them some grace, show them some love, so that way you stay at the top of their minds. They know you, they recognize you. Make sure you participate when Castle have these expos and they do all of these things. Make sure you represent your community and get there, so that way there's a face to the name. When your email pops up, when you have a request, automatically they'll be like, okay, I know Jim, I know Bob, let me help them get to the front of the list. Because I do it all the time. If you work with me, I'm skipping everybody for you. Everybody. You going to the front of the line if you work with me, just because we have built rapport and we built a relationship. So maintain those relationships to make sure that your buildings and your communities are a priority.
Excellent. Melissa?
Safety first. I think I think that needs to be at the forefront of everybody's mindset when looking at anything and assessing pre and post storm. Thinking in terms of safety, for ourselves and for anybody around us, for our residents, for our vendors, communication, that's huge. And really, to Nikki's point, really having everybody on speed dial on your phone, handwritten. I know it's archaic, or vintage, as we would say. Handwrite things, some things don't go bad in a storm when you can actually read it and understand.
Right.
So, but yeah,
Excellent.
planning in advance is going to be key.
Yeah. Jesus?
Oh, as Melissa just said, planning in advance. I actually want to recommend for all the property managers, if you're going through an ongoing project, take a look at the hurricane preparedness plan right now, right after this meeting. Take 10 minutes, take a look at it, see what the content of it is, get a good understanding of it. If you don't have it, then speak with your GC, speak with your owner's rep, and get it included as an exhibit.
Excellent. Andrew?
Nikki, you are awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
And
right.
to add, if you guys want a copy of what a hurricane preparedness, I can send Millie a copy of ours. So that way you can just get familiar with it. Everybody's is a little bit different, but at least have an idea of some of the things that we include and that might pique your interest to make sure that your current GCs are offering you some of these things.
Great.
Your point, Nikki, about the relationships, though, it's I know we've talked about it a lot, but just to kind of make it a little bit anecdotal, so after Wilma, right, in 05, remember how long there were tarps on roofs, blue tarps? It's like 2 years, right? If you were in an airplane after that storm, and you like the ocean, but in those roofs, that wasn't necessarily because insurance companies weren't paying claims. Those roofs took that long to get replaced because by the time those associations were in a position to start the project or cut a check for the down payment, the line was 2 years long. So what everyone's kind of talking about the importance of these vendor relationships, it's real, right? So that's a real life example. And then review all the coverages, right? I mean, that calendar year thing is one of many, and we don't have time to kind of talk through it all, but there's a lot of coverage changes that are happening right now that are very meaningful after you've had a storm, right? So keep that in mind.
I want to just jump in here real
Oh,
quick and
go
just
ahead, Melanie.
want to remind everyone that this webinar will be posted on our website at www.castlegroup.com. It'll be on our resources page within 24 hours. And we thank you all for joining us and for your time today. Thank you to our panel of experts. Again, very, very informative, and we thank you.